What's up guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched, where we look at all things mental health and psychology related. Often we take a look at mental health videos for the general public and personal development videos for the general public. But today, as often we sometimes do, we're going to take a look at a video for psychology students out there. And we're going to be taking a look at starting back at your psychology degree after lockdown and after coronavirus. We're going to be taking a look at some of the challenges that are going to be created as a result of going back to your studies in this really weird time, and my top tips on how to manage that transition for psychology students going back into university after lockdown. Now, many of the points that I'm going to cover here are perhaps maybe more generic points, things that are applicable to all students, but there are some things that I want to cover as well that are very applicable to psychology students. And one of the first ones is to engage with that reflective practice that's so important for any psychology student, be that you're doing an undergraduate, be that a master's, a doctorate, a graduate diploma, whatever it is. Reflective practice in your psychology studies and your psychology work is so important. And you can use this time now to be considering your own reflective stance, your own reflective practice as you start going into the new year of university. And what the thing is as well is universities are going to be expecting you to be discussing your reflections during coronavirus or during lockdown and how that's having an impact on your studies, or how that has had an impact on your studies. Currently, I'm writing my final reflective report for my doctorate, and I'm going to have to talk a bit about what coronavirus has been like for me and what lockdown has been like for me and all the things that have gone on with my practice and my studies. So that's something really applicable for psychology students, is to engage with that reflective practice stance early. Think a little bit about how going into the new academic year, whether you're doing online learning or partial learning, how that is having an impact on your practice and your studies. Use that reflective stance well. Right, my next point is to start and prep early. Now, this is something I talk a lot about with psychology students, and it's the kind of thing that I think is one of the most important things for academic success. Too often we leave assignments or we leave university work way too late in the day for us to feel that we can manage, and that's part of the reason why we get so stressed out. I understand that psychology can be a challenging degree regardless of what kind of degree you're doing in psychology. It can be tough, but if you're leaving things to the last minute, it's going to be even tougher. So one of the things to consider is when you're moving into what is going to be already a high pressurized year, you could be really, doing this entire degree on your own in your house or your flat. That increases pressure, that increases stress. Think about how best you can manage that. Start early with things. Prep early. One of the things I used to do with my degrees when I was starting for the new academic year was I would try and get my hands on an old module guide from the year before. Now, often these module guides do change and guidance changes within them, so don't rely on them solely. But I used to read through those old module guides if I knew a student, or if I was able to get a tutor to send me an old module guide, and I would read through it and start to get to grips with what was expected for me for the coming year. Now, I would do that in the summer. I wouldn't do that when class time had started. I would also look through those assessments, because not often do the assessments change dramatically. And I would start putting together a mini structure of assessments that are due 9, 10, 11 months in the future. Start doing that now. I think this is the time to really hone down on starting your work early, just because of the massive stress and added pressure that you're going to be experiencing going back into your psychological studies with a really different environment and context thanks to coronavirus and lockdown. So start your work early, prepare it early, and get ahead of the game. Okay, my next key point is to stay on top of things. And this is something that I've been thinking a lot about with psychology studies recently, is the overall sense of productivity. And there's a bit of a flux here for me, because there's been a lot of articles and a lot of people speaking about how, during lockdown, people shouldn't be expected to be overly productive. We're going through this massive pandemic, and we should be calmer about that. We shouldn't expect us to go into our houses and learn a new language or build a business from scratch. It's not about being productive, and I understand that. But I also see a beneficial point to being productive. I actually see a mental health point, a beneficial mental health point to being productive. You can understand this, I'm sure, to some degree. At the end of the day, if you feel like you haven't got much work done, you're not going to feel that great about yourself. If you feel like you have been productive and got a lot of work done, you are going to feel good about yourself. So the reason I'm bringing this point in is because don't go into this new academic year allowing the work to get on top of you and feeling totally stressed out about it. Try and go into this academic year and make a real conscious effort to stay on top of things. And on a daily and weekly basis, to really put that effort in each day, you are going to feel so much better if you do this from jump, if you do this from the start. Because in psychology studies, things can really get ahead of you. Things can really get on top of you. You know, if you're missing a few days, or you're missing a week of reading, and you know, a few weeks of classes, you're already really far behind the game. Don't start like that. Get on top of things early. You know, do the small things that are going to make this whole process, this weird transition that you're going to experience, easier. Okay, next key point is to get to know your university's online system better, and do it now. The online system is the kind of thing that is going to be your best friend going into this new academic year with your psychological studies. Like I said, many universities are doing blended learning. Some universities, I actually think my university is going totally online for the next semester. So up until next year, they'll be fully online. So this is something that's really happening for people. The online system is the kind of thing that you're going to have to get really used to, and you can do that right now. You know, you can do that during the summer before you actually start back. Get to know the nuances of that system. Get to know, you know, fully how to explore what, you know, announcements are going to be made, where you can access material, where you can access the online lectures, how you can submit assignments. I'm sure many of this you already know, but fully get to grips with that. You don't want to start the academic year stressing about not knowing the online system. Now, my next point is something that I think is really applicable for psychology students as well, going back into university after lockdown. And that's about creating a support system or a support group. Now, my university and psychology tutor team have been amazing at setting up support services and support groups and being there as we were starting to kind of get to grips with lockdown that really kind of happened overnight. And as we were starting to get to grips with online learning, that hopefully is going to be the case for you and your psychological studies going into the next semester or the next year. But what I would say is that it can never hurt to add your own network of support services and support networks. You can do that with friends and colleagues. One of the things I used to do, and I haven't done it so much this year actually, I should have maybe done it more, but I used to do in previous years, was I would set up support groups with students and colleagues of mine on assignments. So we used to do, like, we have to do this massive logbook of all of our work throughout the whole year. And it can be really nuanced, it can be really detailed, it's a big piece of work. One of the things that's been beneficial has been creating a support group around that logbook, and we've all helped one another and bounced ideas off each other. That's been really beneficial. I would argue that this is the kind of thing that you should be doing and could do going into the next academic year. And you can of course do that online. We all know Zoom so well now. You can do those group online meetings pretty easily. I think creating those support services and those support groups with each other, talking about what it's like studying psychology during coronavirus or coming out of that lockdown into this new weird academic scene that you're going to be going into, I think that can be really beneficial. It's also the kind of thing that would be beneficial for your reflective practice. And actually, you know, if you're wanting to work in psychology, it's that kind of environment that you're getting used to. You know, you're supporting each other, you're helping other people. That's what psychology, in my opinion, is really all about. So you're kind of getting used to that. I think creating your own support services and your own support groups could be really good. Okay, next point, tallied onto that, kind of connected to that, is to access the university support systems too. Now, I used to do this when I was starting out in my psychology degree. I would do the learning development centre stuff. I'm dyslexic in many ways, and so I use those services really beneficially. But the university have other support services, and they will or should have other support services as we come out of lockdown and go into academic studies after coronavirus. Access what the university gives you. You know, access those support services as best you can. You know, they're going to try their best to move into this new academic scene that we're going to be going into. Creating your own support services is really beneficial. Accessing the university's ready-made support services is something you should do too. Okay, my second to last point is to correspond with tutors. Now, this is something I got very good at as I was going into new academic years. I would correspond with tutors and I would just chat to them about what is expected for the upcoming year. Now, sometimes they would give me old module guides. They by no means would give me anything in advance, of course, but they would, you know, maybe I would get a module guide from a few years ago to just kind of get the grips a little bit with what's coming up this year. But I would say that that's something that's really helpful. Actually, just chatting to tutors during the summer, starting to get a little bit of a grip of what's expected, what even the setting is going to be like. Are you going to be fully online? Are you going to be blended learning? What's that blended learning going to be looking like? What are the expectations on assignments and exams even? So those are the kind of things that I think are beneficial because you're kind of hitting the ground running and you want to be giving yourself every advantage possible when it's coming into, you know, this new academic scene after coronavirus and lockdown. And as a psychology student, it's really helpful if you can get a bit of a jump on the game and think, you know, these are the kind of things I need to be thinking about in 6 or 7 months. These are the kind of things I need to be thinking about in 2 months, 9 months. So get in touch with your tutors, see if you can get a little bit of information early. Okay, my final point is to stay on top of what the university are doing and suggesting. Now, this is a really important one, I think. I follow my university on Twitter, I follow them on Instagram, Facebook, I check their website regularly with coronavirus and lockdown updates, and I'm about to finish in a month or two. I would recommend you staying up to date fully with what the university are talking about. Now, my university have been really good at sending emails of updates. I'm sure your university hopefully are doing the same. But if not, make sure to be staying up to date with the updates that they have going on to the next academic year. You don't want to be starting a couple of days or a week before the academic year starts and still not fully coming to grips or understanding with what's expected of you. Again, we want to alleviate the stress and the turmoil of going into these academic studies in what's going to be a really alien context. So just get to grips with what the university is expecting, get to grips with their updates. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. I really felt this video was important. I know this is going to be kind of niche for some people. It's going to be very much based on psychology students going back to their studies after the summer. But I think this is such an important discussion to have because, studying psychology isn't easy. It's so difficult. It's a combination of real academic expertise and in-depth reflective practice, that personable nature and that scientific nature. It's a clashing of all those things, and it makes it incredibly complex. And the last thing we need as psychology students is more complexity, but we've got it. So we need some guidance. And I think these tips, I spent a bit of time really thinking about these tips and thinking about what's the most important steps that we can take to manage that year. If you are a psychology student going into the next academic year, if you're just starting out in your psychology students or your studies, or even if you're going into your final year, I wish you all the very, very best. Fortunately, I'm going to be finishing my psychology studies for good after this summer, so I'm not going to be experiencing what it's like going into this academic year after coronavirus and lockdown, but I really do wish you guys all the very, very best. You can always reach out to GetPsyched if you need some support. I try and get back to as many people as I can. Hopefully these videos are helpful for you guys, and hopefully this video has been helpful. If it has, make sure to hit that like button and comment, and I'll get back to you. And if you've been enjoying GetPsyched as a whole, then make sure to subscribe to us and hit that little bell next to the subscribe button, and you'll get weekly reminders every time we upload. We look at all videos in mental health, or all topics on mental health and psychology. Thanks again for watching, guys, and hopefully catch you next week.